This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
Brandon is checked by Cirelli. Cirelli bumps it forward and chases Anthony Cirelli down the right wing. Cirelli trying to come it alone. Cirelli is checked, cuts it, score! A backhand deep! Cirelli! He wins it for the Lightning in overtime! The Lightning win it 2-1. A Dallas player tried to poke check it away. Cirelli broke through the check and finished on his backhand.
Yeah, I thought we started pretty good. I thought that Gordo line was buzzing, James line. And we were just kind of rolling there, just trying to play the right way. Game on, we just knew to stick to our process. Both goalies made some really big saves, and it's a tight checking game, so it was nice to come with the win.
Tight checking game. Both goalies played well. How about Anthony Cirelli in overtime, partner? That was a power move.
6 goals for Cirelli this year.
Pops out. My goodness. And the speed. How about that? The speed.
He took off.
Yeah, I mean, that is impressive.
He had a couple of guys chasing him who can skate.
Yes.
And they did not catch him.
No. Who was the diving attempt at the end?
Rantanen.
So, his stick bounced off Cirelli. I mean, that was
Cirelli, I think by the
move.
time Cirelli took the shot, the stick was no longer, in his body.
No.
But when he was making his move, Rantanen's stick was,
just
hooked around his left arm.
Yeah.
He moved it to kind of the right side of his body.
Right. What a tremendous
Yeah.
goal. What a good game. And the
It
Lightning
was
get
a
2 more
very good
points.
game for the Lightning. Yeah.
Against a really good team. We're going to talk about it for the next hour. We discussed this on the show yesterday. We talked about it last night on the last call about this road trip coming up. This will be a good test. There's going to be some very good teams that the Lightning are going to be going after. And anytime you go on the road, partner, out west, Colorado especially, it's just a little different.
Altitude.
It's just a little bit different. And so maybe the Lightning are starting to find their mojo at the right time to come back from this road trip potentially with more points than games played. I think Sunday will be an interesting game. That'll be an important one because if you can get to there, I don't want to say you're playing with house money the following 2 games, but you feel really good about how that's going to play out. Potentially.
Yeah, and we can get into the Utah game because we're going to have a show before that game is played. Team flies out to Salt Lake City tomorrow. The game is – so we move the clocks back Saturday night. Everyone will, I guess, know to do that.
If you have young kids, you're dreading that.
Yeah. If you're not doing it, your electronic devices will do it for you. So whether you're being dragged back an hour, the Lightning are going to the Mountain Time Zone. So it is a 3:30 Eastern face-off here, 1:30 Utah time. And then they depart straight for Denver. And that'll also be a Mountain Time Zone game on Tuesday. And then Pacific time for Vegas. So the start times are a little wonky, and we're gaining an hour as well. But people will figure out when the game is on. And we can maybe get into that game a little bit today because it's our last show until next Monday. The game last night, to me, this is the 5th game in a row. I know the Lightning lost the first of those 5. The 5th game in a row, though, where the Lightning have been the better team.
Yep.
So sometimes you don't win when you're the better team. You run into a hot goalie, you make a critical mistake at a key time. That certainly happened in the game against Chicago, the one game that they lost. But we're starting to see it reflected in the stats. The one game that was the opposite of what I'm going to spell out was the Anaheim game. And we discussed that game. That game was a little bit different because it was just a high-chance game. The Ducks have some skilled players, and the Lightning had some issues at points in that game, kind of keeping them in check. But as we talked about, when kind of the rubber needed to meet the road after the Ducks had tied the game in the 3rd period, the Lightning controlled the rest of the game, which was very important. And then they got the late goal from Cirelli in the power play to win that game. But the Lightning were outshot in that game. I think the Ducks finished with 40 shots, and it was probably a game in which, for sure, they gave up too many scoring chances, but they themselves generated a lot of scoring chances. It was still a good game, and I will maintain the Lightning were the better team in that game and deserved to win. It was just not a buttoned-up defensive game. The other games, though, when you look at them, the Lightning have done a really good job of limiting scoring chances.
Yep.
And, to the extent there's been a little bit of a problem with rush chances against, we've seen that become less of an issue through this stretch, to the point that last night Dallas got an odd man in the third period. I think it was actually right before the goal was scored by Ernie, or maybe it was 1-1 at that point. But Robertson got a 2-on-1. Vasilevsky made a save. I think that was their only odd man chance, and really their only dangerous rush opportunity, essentially, that they had in the game. This is a very strong performance by the Lightning against an excellent opponent. Now, what I said about the Lightning game against Vegas which was another very strong performance by the Lightning against an excellent opponent. Vegas maybe didn't have it. That may have been true. I thought Dallas kind of had it last night. Dallas played at a very fast pace. This was the fastest game in terms of pace I think the Lightning have played this year. This was a high-tempo game, and the Lightning had the edge. The Lightning executed better than Dallas. Dallas did execute, though. And where I'm going with all of this is the Lightning needed to really be on their game, not only with the puck, but without the puck, to be able to handle the fact that their opponent was also playing at a fast pace. I mean, that first period felt like a track meet to me. Not a lot of whistles. Sometimes you can have a period without a lot of whistles that's not fast-paced. That first period was the fastest period I've seen the Lightning play this year, and Dallas wasn't slow either. But when we look at the stats at the end of the first period, shots were 11-6. Attempts were 27-13 Lightning. I mean, they more than doubled Dallas's attempts, and they certainly more than doubled the scoring chances. Jake Ottinger was fantastic in the first period to keep the Lightning off the board. Vasilevsky was far less busy, but I think he was less busy because the Lightning did a lot of good work in front of him to neutralize what Dallas was trying to do. Now, if we had a Dallas person on, they might disagree. They might say Dallas didn't play that well in the first period. I'm just telling you, that was my take. Now, I saw the Stars. They were coming, and the Lightning were like, we got this, right? Dallas had some extended ozone shifts. The Lightning didn't let anything bad happen. They kind of hung in there. They battled, and that's the other common denominator. Not only are they defending well, they are battling. They are winning puck battles, which is allowing the Lightning to have more possession than the other team. So this, in some ways, the way it unfolded was very similar to a lot of the other games that we've seen during this strong stretch, Greg. The Lightning are kind of dictating play more than the other team. The Lightning are at the rudder. I've used that expression before. They're making the other team extremely uncomfortable, but they're kind of stuck in a tight game because the opposition goalie is playing incredibly well. Look at the goaltending the Lightning have seen during the stretch. Even Saros, which was a game in which the Lightning scored 4 on him and an empty netter, like, he single-handedly kept Nashville in that game into the third period, for sure. We saw Lindbaum from Vegas, tremendous performance. Lightning did score 4 on Dostal, but Dostal was outstanding in that game. We talked about Spencer Knight. Spencer Knight played very, very well for Chicago in that game. And then we had Ottinger last night. Ottinger, I mean, that game could have been 4-0 in the first period. Easily, if not for Ottinger. So the Lightning are kind of running into a stretch of really excellent goaltending, and if they continue generating the level of chances that they generated last night, certainly and generally over this win streak, I think the goals are going to start to come more frequently, but they've kind of been in these tight games where they really outplay the other team. That's why some of them have gone to overtime. The other thing I'll say is that because it was a tight game, and let me just back up. So after the first period, I thought the pace stayed high, but the scoring chance number went down for the Lightning, and it stayed down for Dallas.
Sure.
And I know that you guys touched on this on the last call a little bit, but I'm going to repeat it. The second period at times has been a bugaboo for the Lightning with the long change, and sometimes that, they get stuck in their own zone, and you can't change players. It just is like a vicious cycle that repeats, right? They have been by far the better team in terms of kind of managing the second period than their opponent in the last 3 games. I think that one team had 2 shots in the second period, one team had 3 shots in the second period, and last night Dallas had only 4 shots on net in the second period. It was not as dynamic an offensive period, I thought, for the Lightning in the second as what they had in the first. But they got the goal, which we can get into, where Hagel got a bounce and scored his first power play goal since March of 2024, which is
Incredible.
a weird, crazy stat because he scored all these other goals. So the Lightning take a 1-0 lead into the third, and they give up that odd man kind of early. Vasily makes the save, and it was just a hard-working shift for the Stars. They throw a puck to the net. Ernie gets position and tips it in. So now it's 1-1. I didn't think the Lightning's play really dipped, which is good to see. We've seen that through this stretch where the other team has made a play and it's not unraveling on the Lightning. But similar to the Vegas game, they got into penalty trouble in the second half of the third period. Against Vegas, if you recall, they took 2 minor penalties sandwiched around a disallowed goal scored by Kucherov. That's an emotionally difficult thing to navigate through, and they did it.
Yeah.
Last night, there was no disallowed goal, but they took overlapping penalties. So Dallas had a 1-minute 5-on-3, and the Lightning did an incredible job on the penalty kill. Vasi made 4 saves during the 2-man disadvantage, and the same 3 guys, because Dallas never really lost possession during the 5-on-3, the same 3 penalty killers were out there for the full 5-on-3 against. It was Cirelli, McDonough, and Hedman. Probably would have been McDonough and Chernak, except Chernak was in the box because he got called for the second penalty. So of the things that we can check off as like really good work by the Lightning and things they did well, the penalty killing against an excellent power play team. Remember, we talked about it on the show yesterday. Mm-hmm. Dallas came in with the 3rd best power play in the NHL. I understand. Duchesne is injured. Hintz is injured. I get it. They still have a lot of weapons. And they had a 1-minute 5-on-3 with a chance to grab the lead and maybe win the game. And the Lightning got through it. So we had to overtime, and it's, again, kind of similar to the Vegas game where, you know, a play in the defensive zone by Hagel leads to an odd man the other way. Against Vegas, Hagel stripped Theodore, and he and Kucherov converted on a 2-on-1. Last night, Hagel stripped. He didn't strip Rantanen, he tied up Rantanen's stick, which allowed Cirelli to grab the puck, and Cirelli was gone and won the game on the breakaway. But you know, kind of the takeaway for me is another game in which the Lightning only allowed 1 goal. They held Dallas 21 shots and 45 total shot attempts. They are imposing their will on the other team. And you're right, this is going to be a challenging road trip, but I think the Lightning are entering the road trip playing the way they want to be playing. It's not going to be easy. It never is on the road, and I don't know that they're going to be like dominating the stats like this against the teams they've got coming up. But they've shown, at least during this win streak, that they can handle what the other team is throwing at them, and they've shown an ability to push back. And some of it, like Coop has talked about, the way they've set up the lines, it's just they're in sync. They weren't in sync at the start of the year. We talked about that, and they are very much in sync right now. And I'll put at the top of the list, well, I thought Hagel and Cirelli had, if not their best game, one of their best games of the year last night. They look like the duo from last year for sure. This Gord, Holmberg, Gergensen's line, they are setting the table for the Lightning. They are so hard to play against. And they are spending the vast majority of the time they're out on the ice in the offensive zone. I think that's kind of the first building block, and then the other lines are feeding off what they are doing.
I think it's overblown, probably. Did the team kind of ride the momentum of a line finding their mojo after seeing what the 4th line has been able to accomplish here the last... How many games have they been together, partner?
Since Gergensen's came back, yeah.
It feels like
it's the 4-game winning streak.
So it's,
that's what
you know,
it is.
have they found their groove because, in part, that line has found chemistry. And maybe it's set the tone, you know, starting the periods. You know, John Cooper saying, okay, go out and send a little bit of a message.
Mm-hmm.
I think we like that line, and I know John Cooper quibbles with, you know, 3rd line, 4th line, 2nd line, 1st line.
Yeah, I think why are you calling it the 4th line? Which I even said, do we call it the 4th line? Whatever you want to call it.
Yes. So, John,
they are providing the Lightning with excellent minutes.
I would say, Coach, what do you want to call them? What do you want to call them? Because they're not the 1st line. I think they've got an identity, and so much about the league is finding you hear teams and coaches say we need to play our game, we need to find our game. And there can be a game within the game. Like different lines have different skill sets, but you need to find what you do well and mesh and have that chemistry. And that I'm going to call it, for the sake of this show, the fourth line has a different role than the first line. It just does. That's sports. And that fourth line, what is their responsibility? And this really hasn't changed over the years, partner. It's to provide energy, not to get scored on. That ties into be responsible defensively, and at times chip in here and there offensively. That fourth line can do it. And ironically, it is not made up of young players. I think that's a very important point. It's not to say that a Jack Finley couldn't excel as a fourth line center playing with two other veterans. I think it's a much easier role to accept when you are a veteran. You understand what your role is. You are who you are. Yanni Gourde at this point is who he is. Gergensen's, for the sake of his skill set, is not going to become a 30-goal scorer. He is who he is. And that is somebody who knows his role. It's to go out, hit people, and be responsible defensively. Mm-hmm. And Holmberg, to a lesser extent, maybe out of the three, has the most offensive upside.
He hit the post.
Correct.
I didn't even actually mention that. Let me just say, before Ernie scored, the Lightning, and that came early in the third, the Lightning hit two posts in the third period, Holmberg and then Kucherov. And you hit two posts, you could be up 2-0, certainly, if one of them goes in, and you blink and it's 1-1. And they were just like, okay, we're good. Let's keep rolling along.
Yeah,
they didn't let the Stars build momentum from that, is what
no
I'm
doubt.
trying to say.
It's a great point. And so that's part of it too. But what I'm saying is it may make some sense. I think for this team, that fourth line, it's made up of veterans who know their role, and feel comfortable in their own skin being the type of player they are right now in their career.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they've accepted that role and they're excelling at it. Has that allowed the team to settle down because that's one less line you've got to juggle? Or that's one line you can look at and say, they've got it together. We know when they go out over the boards, they're grabbing some momentum for us because they're tilting the ice strategically. Maybe that's part of it. I just think you have three guys buying into what they're doing. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they are established players in this league who understand what their job is. There's no confusion. There's no, well, we're going to put Connor Geekie on a fourth line, but I'm not sure he really needs to be on a fourth line because his pedigree would suggest he needs to be on a first line. There's none of that. These are who they are. And, from there, okay, what are the other lines looking like? And I think we always felt like the Stars were going to figure this thing out. And it was going to be some combination of Kucherov and Point together. You've got Gensel. And then you're thinking, okay, we know Hagel and Cirelli eventually are going to figure out, and once they do, that's going to look pretty good. Who's going to play with them? And then all of a sudden, you're seeing a James, Bjorkstrand, Gonsalves to a degree, dynamic. Maybe one of those guys plays on a second line. So now you're starting to have some things come into place, and I think there's a couple reasons for that. I think one, the Stars are feeling better. They're not all back, by the way. I actually think there's another level. I've been banging this drum a little bit. I mean, I don't think we've seen Victor Hedman's best. And I think that adds another component to this team that we haven't seen. Ideally, I'd like to see it starting on Sunday. But I think we're starting to see Kucherov become that impactful player we know he is. Cirelli's got 6 goals all of a sudden. You mentioned Hagel's starting to look like himself now. And, Gensel, I think, has chipped in and has been fine. And I think Braden Point actually has another level to get to as well. I think he's been better. And the face-offs we can discuss, too, because I still think
he didn't take
a
lot of them last night. Actually, Gensel on that line took most of the face-offs.
They weren't great in the face-off circle last night either.
No, they've had 2 subpar games again.
And so that'll be something to monitor. But I wonder, again, I don't want to overemphasize the fourth line's role in adding some stability to the lineup, and potentially James and Destu coming up as well. Mm-hmm. It feels like things have settled down a little bit, but maybe that is it. And then, because we always talk about adding juice, adding energy to the lineup. maybe this is part of that. It's had an effect on this 4-game winning streak. And John Cooper, I've got to think, partner, is going to ride this for sure heading into Sunday's game to see if it can continue.
Yeah, I think Crozier is probably going to come back next game. So there will be a lineup decision. As we talked about, though, they have an open roster spot. So they could add him, and it would just be, instead of 2 scratches, healthy scratches, there would be 3. We can get into that after the game on Sunday when we have the show on Monday. But you're right that it has helped them set up the forward lines in a way that has been very productive for the Lightning, whether it's Hagel and Cirelli playing as a line of 2 when they go 11-7, or playing as a line of 3 with Douglas, where Douglas isn't really playing a lot. So they're still rotating another forward in there. That seems to be the lineup that has worked very well for the Lightning. And we've talked about James and Destu coming up, but also Gergensen's returning is a big part of this.
Yeah.
And, Coop was asked the question. We played the clip for our very, very loyal listeners / audience. They may remember this, but I remember hearing it at the beginning of yesterday's show. Is the clip that Steve put together of Coop talking after the Nashville game about this Gord line, because they had accounted for 2 goals, including the first one, which is a very important goal in that game. And he said, they can do a lot of things. They, or however he put it, he's like, they can have success. It maybe means making the other team play in the defensive zone, or like tonight, they chip in. So last night, they didn't chip in offensively. But what did they do? And I do remember one shift in particular, and I'd have to go back and look at the shift chart to see exactly how long the shift lasted. But you're 1-1. You're down to the last probably 2.5 minutes of regulation. And Gord, Gergensen, and Holmberg came over the boards, and they spent their entire shift in the Dallas end. They cycled it. The Stars players were getting tired. I don't even know if they got a shot out of it, but they basically burned a minute. So you went from 2.5 minutes left to 90 seconds left. So from the Lightning's perspective, yeah, you want to score. You want to win the game in regulation. But the Lightning have already had 2 games this year where they've been late in the third period in a tie game, and they gave up the winning goal and came out of that game with no points. So what did the Gord line do in that shift? They spent a crucial minute late in the third period of a tie game in the offensive zone with possession of the puck.
Yeah.
So the Lightning didn't have to worry about Dallas potentially scoring for that minute. It's almost like, I keep using the football analogy, but like you're avoiding a turnover, but, your ball control, you're not going to give up any points if you're moving the ball down the field, even if you yourself don't get any points. In this case, the clock was an important part of the game. They had to make sure that as well as they played, they didn't come out of that game with no points. They got through the 5-on-3 kill. Now, okay, it's 1-1. We can talk about their power play too. They got a power play goal, but the power play continues to be very much off kilter. They themselves had a power play, didn't do anything with it. So now it's 1-1. You've got, about 5.5 minutes left when their power play ended in the third period. Are you going to get the game to overtime? How do you get the game to overtime? Well, spending a minute in the offensive zone certainly helps. So that provides value. Like, that is a valuable contribution that the Gord line made to the Lightning's effort last night. And, that's part of it too. I mean, how many times have you said, Greg, like the best defense is a good offense. If you can make the other team play defense without the puck, the likelihood of them scoring is very, very low. And that's what happened on that one shift late in the third period. That's what they're doing. Does that mean they never spend any time in their own end? No. I mean, Dallas got them working in the defensive zone a couple of times last night, but they navigated out of it. Like, they got the puck eventually and moved it out. So they're going to need that value moving forward, where you don't get last change, right, on the road. And, the Gord line is going to be out against a variety of different lines probably. And
for sure,
they've shown that they can handle. They're going up against another team's that we're going to call fourth line. They're going up against another team's top line. It doesn't seem to matter. They just do the same thing and make that opposing line and that opposing unit of 5 work in the defensive zone.
Destu picks up an assist,
Yeah, on that power play goal.
which was nice. I think James had would you say, up and down game a little bit? Was
A little bit.
dangerous.
2 games in a row now, he's taken a penalty, and he was stripped. He was trying to skate up the ice. He got stripped. But I still think that he's got these dynamic qualities to his game, and they are helping the Lightning. I mean, one of the chances the Lightning had in the first period, James set it up. He passed to Lilleberg, who was very aggressive moving up in the play last night. Lilleberg took a shot. Ottinger made the save. Gonçalves, I don't know if Gonçalves had a shot or got tied up. The puck was right at the top of the crease, though. That didn't go in. Then Bjorkstrand came in. It looked like the net was open, and Labushkin got his stick blade down in time, and the shot fluttered wide of the net or over the net. But that play was started by James.
Yeah.
Like, James started, he was the first, he knocked the first domino over. And we've seen that from him repeatedly. I was chatting with Brian Engblom during one of the intermissions, or maybe it was even before the game. He's like, I'd like to see James get rewarded because, as well as he's playing, and he is playing well, maybe it starts to weigh on you a little bit that you're getting these chances and not converting. It happened to Braden Point, if you recall, his rookie year, at least for goals. He may have had some assists, but it took him a while to get his first goal. And then it was like the dam broke. So I don't know if that's going to happen with James, but I mean, let's put it this way. He's not coming out of the lineup. Like, he's still giving the Lightning really, really good minutes when he's out there. I think they're probably going to say to him, though, we want you to be aggressive. We want you to be a puck hound, but, no penalties. The last night it was a hook. Was it a hook in the offensive zone?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right, partner. Do we want to get to some questions?
Sure.
For the next 30 minutes or so.
Well, we should mention we got an update because the team is practicing right now. Vasilevsky and Gord, body maintenance. And Nick Paul is not on the ice.
Does Johansson get a game?
Yeah, I think
on this
so.
road trip, you think?
No back-to-backs here.
Yeah,
but
I know. It's, hate to go out
maybe
there
the
and have
Utah
him not play.
game. If you remember last year, they played Brandon Halverson in Utah. He was 1 star with the Lightning last year.
Although Utah's played well this year, right? So it's one of those things where if they went with Vasi, you wouldn't be completely surprised. But you've got a couple big teams waiting for you too,
Yeah, so Johansson got the Anaheim game. So Vasi's played 3 in a row. I think for sure Johansson's getting one of these games. I don't know which game. But I'm not the goalie coach, so I mean, is it possible Vasi gets all 3? Sure, it's possible.
We shall
Lightning
see.
come home. The Lightning come home, so they're going to spend the night in Vegas. I got the calendar for the month, which we're just starting the month tomorrow, so I didn't see it until the other day. But the team, I'm not surprised about this. They do this not infrequently, but it's a long trip home from Vegas. It's a night game in Vegas. So they play the game in Vegas on Thursday, spend the night in Vegas, fly home on the Friday, the 7th, play Washington on the 8th. I have to believe Vasilevsky is getting that home game against Washington. So does that mean that they don't play him in the Vegas game, maybe? Does it mean that Johansson gets an earlier game on the road trip? We'll see.
Time will tell.
I'm just sharing
Yes, they say.
the travel schedule.
This is a good one. Blind Squirrel Sports says, Dave, I've heard you might have a book with a similar name to mine. And then he writes, must be a great book. So
Well, I liked
Of course
it.
it is.
I think most of the
Of course
people
it is.
who have gotten back to
Yeah.
me have liked that. I wonder which came first, my title or his handle.
time will tell.
Probably
I'm
him.
sure.
I
let us know.
did not know Blind Squirrel Sports existed though, so I
Neither
cannot
did I.
claim. I don't know. Can you claim ignorance if there's a copyright issue here?
I think everybody would understand and trust you that
Yeah.
you didn't know.
I didn't know.
Chris says, another great game by the Bolts. The Atlantic is still so close right now with 6 teams within 2 points of each other. Hopefully they can keep the winning streak rolling on the road trip.
Yeah, the Atlantic is really tight. I checked it last night before I went to bed. I think the Detroit game hadn't ended yet because Detroit ended up winning in a shootout. So maybe I saw 7 teams were separated by 3 points. The second place team had 14 points, and then there were a bunch of teams tied basically at the bottom with 11. The Lightning have 12.
Yeah.
That is extremely tight, but I don't expect it's going to stay that tight like into February. I mean, eventually there's going to be some separation. What has been surprising, so I really like Washington. I think Washington is set up to have a lot of success. And I hadn't really looked at the standings, in part because the Lightning, I knew the Lightning were near the bottom, so I'm like, they need to get their own house in order. But after they won their fourth in a row, and I was like, okay, it was a busy night in the league. It looked like a lot of Atlantic teams did well last night. So I checked the standings last night. And then I looked at the Metropolitan Division. And honestly, I was a little surprised that Washington, I think they're 6-4, which is just okay. Mm-hmm. And there are a bunch of teams ahead of Washington in that division, including Pittsburgh, which people are unsure if what Pittsburgh is doing is sustainable. I confess not to really know, but there's no disputing the fact that they've gotten off to a great start. Philly is playing pretty well. Carolina had a brutal schedule to start of the year, and they navigated through it. And we talked about New Jersey, which, roared out of the gates with what, eight in a row they won. So while the Atlantic is bunched, the Metropolitan has actually performed better in terms of teams and their record, right?
Yeah. That is true. EB says, love the show. I really appreciate it. The Bolts are looking solid on defense, which wins championships.
Coop said last night, because he was asked about the winning streak, he said, we're taking the risk out of our game, which is something
that was what I took from that.
He's preached a lot over the years, but it's true. They're not feeding the other team's attack by making borderline risky plays, or maybe risky plays, borderline questionable plays that maybe you shouldn't be making that play because it might lead to something bad coming back the other way. And early in the year, often it was. The goaltending, I mean, okay, so Johansson dealt with a lot of chances with Anaheim. Some of that is Anaheim. Mm-hmm. Let's acknowledge that there's a talented team on the other side in a game like that. But when you exclude that game, I mean, how many dangerous chances has the other team generated since the Lightning came back from Columbus in going 4-1 in the last 5? I don't think many. Certainly not in the last 2 home games. The Vegas game and the Dallas game and the Nashville game on the road. Those 3 games, the Lightning's chance against number has been very low, especially 5-on-5.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Chris says, great 60-minute win last night.
I guess technically it was, 62.5 or so, but yes.
It was a good game. We've talked about that. Andrew says, DeStuke should stay in the lineup when Crozier returns. Ooh, buddy, that's going to be a topic. I can tell you that right now. What do we do?
So a couple of things going on with this game at Utah. The first is I do think Crozier is going to be activated. I don't have any inside knowledge about that, but Coop said he's very close. I mentioned I saw Crozier in the locker room after he'd finished his skate yesterday morning, and he's like, yeah, I'm really close. So, I mean, they're going to keep him on IR if they don't need to, and they have the open roster spot. So a couple things going into this Utah game. First of all, DeStuke played in Utah in the ECHL. So knowing Coop, I don't know that he played at the Delta Center. I don't know where the ECHL team played. Some of our fans could probably tell us, but it's a little bit of a homecoming for DeStuke, and that would be a Coop thing to DeStuke has played well enough that he shouldn't come out of the lineup. But if you have a log jam, maybe he is the guy to come out. I don't think he's coming out because for one of many reasons, one of which is, or for many reasons, one of those reasons would be they're playing at Utah. I think if Crozier is healthy and able to play, they are going to try and get him in. They could go 11-7 again. I mean, Radish has been scratched. They could sub Crozier for Radish. I'm not saying they're going to do that. I'm just throwing that out there as a hypothetical. Radish played the least of the defensemen last night. 10:37. Just checking the other D to make sure that that's accurate. Yeah. So if you go 11-7, presumably Douglas is not playing. But you don't think Douglas would like to play against his former team? I mean, Utah was his team, right?
Is that a
so
revenge game?
I'm curious to see what the lineup looks like.
You know, we had talked about this last year. It was a point of conversation that we brought up. And because I think, partner, we had felt that the Lightning maybe had to lean on their stars a little bit more last year until the trade deadline when they tried to address the depth issues scoring-wise, Bjorkstrand and Gord. You felt like, was it more advantageous to go 11-7 more because you're able to play your star players a little bit more, understanding that, you know, maybe you're not as deep as you should be or potentially could be.
Yeah.
Understanding there are pros and cons to that philosophy. I'm not sure it helps 11-7 through an 82-game season. You don't want guys worn out. And, you know.
But the Lightning have done that for long stretches and have not had to, quote-unquote, pay the price of tired players. So
I'm wondering.
It can be done.
It can be done. And I'm also wondering, though, you know, look, when Paul comes back, what I'm saying is I think the Lightning have found a nice rhythm with their forwards where I think they have 12 very solid forwards who fit various roles, maybe even 13 or 14. Okay, so bear with me on this analysis. But can you make the argument that there is a overflow now of quality defensemen, you know, when Crozier does come back, and Radish is in the mix? Destu is playing very well.
Crozier paired, by the way, Steve just let us know on a text. Crozier and Destu are paired together at practice today, and Lilleberg and Radish are paired together at practice.
Gotcha. And there's always the options of sending people down. We understand that. I get that. Whether they clear through waivers or not, there are options or trade where you can make things easier from that perspective in a numbers game. But what I'm saying is, partner, if you feel like you've got 7 good defensemen and you want to play them on a regular basis, and again, these aren't old players. A lot of these are younger guys, relatively speaking, that you probably don't want to sit. And so if you think they're NHL ready and you want them to play, because you have more depth on the back end, does it force John Cooper to go with that lineup a little bit more, 11-7, knowing that it's a unique spot we're in, it's a good spot we're in, but maybe it's the forward position that is the one that has to do a little bit more tinkering than you do on the back end?
So I think the fact that the team has won 4 straight answers that question. I mean, basically, it's the same lineup. It's 11-7, or it's 11-6 with Douglas playing 2 to 4 minutes. So it's kind of sort of 11-6. That's the lineup that they're going to use, I think, in the next game. I know I just said Douglas returning to Utah. I may be wrong about that. I think Crozier comes in the lineup based on the fact he's paired with Destu. I think Crozier probably comes in for Radish, a righty for a righty. Again, I may be wrong about that. We're speculating. But as you often say on our show, you know, we can give our opinion. I don't set the lineup, but I'm trying to read the tea leaves here.
So I would agree with you. I mean, I would play
practice.
Crozier. Yeah.
And what is not reading the tea leaves is the Lightning are not going to mess around with a winning lineup. Now, to the extent you can say, well, Crozier is coming in, that is changing a lineup that has been winning. That's different. Like, had he not gotten hurt, he never would have come out of the lineup. So he's ready. He's going to come back in.
It feels
and let's see if they go with this lineup that I just spelled out and see how they do. If they start losing / not playing as well, then I think that invites changes, whether it's switching up the lines or making actual lineup changes, which goes to you were kind of saying, are we going to be looking at 11-7 for the rest of the year? Like, what happens when this guy comes back? Like, right now the team is winning and playing well. So leave it. If either one of those things starts to change, or both, then you're going to see changes for sure.
What's interesting is that it feels like Radish may be the odd man out on the back end. It just feels that way. And maybe it's just they know what they have in him, and these younger guys that are coming up, they want to see what they
keep
can
in
do.
mind. Destu is 27, so but newer guys,
relatively
for sure.
speaking,
yeah.
right? Relatively speaking, from a NHL perspective, I mean, clearly they're intrigued by the skill set.
Mm-hmm. And Destu, Radish saw a little bit of time on power play too last night, the one they had in the third period. But Destu can play the power play. So, if he's in, he can fill a role that they've been using Radish in.
Yeah.
And then it becomes competition, which, as you've said, competition is not a bad thing.
I love
it. Can force players to elevate their own game.
Yes, I would agree with that. What does Chris say? Ernie,
because of course Ernie scored on us.
Yeah, good for him.
That was a nice deflection.
First goal of the year. He's played in 9 games, I think, now.
Yeah,
for Dallas.
I mean, he's really been in the minors the last few years since his time in Detroit ended, and in some ways, they also played 11-7. So no line was absolutely set in stone, and what Gulletson was really doing was he was mixing his lines because Dallas was not going as well as the Lightning, right? So we saw the line I'm going to give you, which is the line that was out on the ice when they scored the goal. We saw some changes through the game, but Ernie, Foxa, and Nathan Bastian, former Devil, they may have been Dallas's best line 5-on-5. And they were kind of sort of the fourth line, if you will. I actually had in line rushes Foxa and Bastian were the line of 2, except they were the fourth line. Kind of like Hagel and Cirelli when the Lightning have gone 11-7 this year. So Ernie was on that line, and they scored the goal, and I saw Ernie with those 2 guys later. So good for Adam Ernie.
Yeah, right. Hey, trying to hang around, stay in the league. Local nomad, I love that. Do you think Vasi will get all 3 games of this road trip with no back-to-backs? Good question.
Yeah, we addressed it. I mean, unknown. If it were me making a guess, I would think Johansson gets one of the games.
Elgin says, local nomad, if history tells me anything, it's that Vasi will play every game Cooper lets him.
Well, that is true.
He'd play all 82 if he could.
If they gave Vasi, if Vasi was the judge and jury of this, who shall play, I will make this determination. Vasi would be like, I want to play every game. But Franjan gets a vote. John Cooper gets a vote. And they don't want Johansson. Johansson's played really well this year. You don't want this guy sitting probably for too long. And the Lightning don't have another back-to-back until the middle of November. So we are on a need-to-know basis, though. We in the broadcast department. So
we don't get told a ton, but that's why we have to make some educated guesses. Karen says, I'm loving the found energy and cohesiveness of our team now. Feels like we're back. Yeah, I would agree. They look good.
Yeah.
They're playing with some what we like to call a little swag. NHL, but in MS Paint, the real test will be Utah. Dallas wasn't healthy, and although we played better, we didn't get any clear chances that went in. Utah will also tell us how we might play against a team like Montreal, also young and fast. What do you think?
So,
you buy that?
Yeah, I'm not sure about. I don't know what the fan meant about didn't get any clear chances that went in. I mean, they had chances. They had some tremendous chances. Now, is the fan saying that they had chances and they just didn't go in, or are they crediting Dallas for not giving up chances? I think the Lightning had lots of chances last night, especially in the first period. I mentioned they had 2 posts early in the third. Both were dangerous chances. I mean, they were great looks that the Lightning had. Phil made Ottinger a star. Ottinger kept his team in that game. So that part, I'm probably not in simpatico with the fan. Dallas does have injuries. That is true. They're missing Duchesne. They're missing Rope Hintz, and Ben has been out all year. Those are significant.
They are. Those aren't insignificant holes. Pieces. Correct.
But what did I just say? Like, in some ways, it was their depth line that gave them their best kind of spirited play, so to speak. They had Heiskanen. They had Harley. They had Rantanen. Yeah. They had Wyatt Johnston, who's a back-to-back 30-goal guy.
Mm-hmm.
They had a 5-on-3 for a minute that could have, let's be honest, that could have won them the game.
They got players.
Yeah, so I'm not accepting just like, well, they weren't healthy. They played well. They're a good team. They had a 3-game winning streak coming in. And they've gone the whole year without Ben. And for sure, the last 2 games, they didn't have Hintz. And Duchesne's been out since the 4th game of the year. So they've won games without those guys. They just beat Washington 1-0 in Dallas before they played the Lightning.
Yeah.
Washington's a good team. That's a quality win, which I'm going to say the Lightning had a quality win last night. Now, I confess, I haven't been paying too close attention to what's going on with Utah, except I understand their mascot is named Tusky. So they actually have a mascot now, as opposed to a mascot walking around with hockey club written on the shirt.
How ridiculous was that?
Yeah.
I mean, that was a little.
So they're the Mammoth.
Yeah.
And they went on a long road trip and did very well. I think they won 7 in a row before they lost to Edmonton at the end of what seemed to be a long road trip. They're a good team. This will be a test of a road trip, but to dismiss in some way what the Lightning did last night, I don't think is fair or accurate. The Lightning have had some quality wins during this stretch of time.
Nick says, do you think the Lightning will more evenly split starts between Vasi and Jonas this year?
No. Well, by more evenly split, do I think that it will head more toward 50-50? Maybe. I mean, the Lightning have more back-to-backs this year, but it would be on the margins. Do I think that they're going to split starts 50-50? No. Nor have they already this year.
Tim says 77 is looking his age.
Well, that's a rather harsh comment, Timothy. You had said earlier in the show, Greg, you would like to see more from Hedman. I thought Victor did a lot of really important work last night defensively. There were a few kind of sort of looks the Stars might have gotten. When I talked about how the Lightning handled what the Stars were throwing at them, Hedman was in the middle of that. Like, he used his stick to block some shots that ended up going out of play.
He was very good.
In that regard, and he was part of that 5-on-3 penalty kill that helped the Lightning, keep the game tied at 1.
Yeah.
So
that part
Hedman is part of this power play, which we haven't talked about. The power play is out of sorts for sure, and we can get into that. I'm not ignoring it, and maybe that's what the fan is talking.
Well, you know
about,
what? Too the first play of the game, the in his own zone cross ice pass led to Dallas.
Yes,
an opportunity.
that was a mistake. Yes,
I felt like in the 3-on-3 there was not good with the puck. There were some questionable decisions that allowed Dallas some opportunities that, had you just taken care of the puck a little bit better,
right?
That I think that and the missed shots are things I'm kind of watching here, where I've said it just through 10 games it looks off.
Yeah,
and you would think a Hall of Famer is going to eventually, like the other guys, Kucherov, Hagel, Cirelli, Point, eventually you figure it out. I think it's just taking him maybe a little bit longer offensively to find his groove. Would you agree? I mean, I
think he has been up and down this year.
Yeah.
And the points you made about last night's game are accurate. He did try that pass up the middle in the first period that got intercepted. I don't think the Stars got a shot on net out of it, if I'm remembering right. I thought the Lightning were covered in time. And while last night they have him with no shots that missed the net, I remember one specifically on one of the power plays the Lightning had. Might have actually been the one they had in the third period, or maybe it was 5-on-5, but he blasted a shot wide and it ricocheted off the end wall, and the Stars were looking to counter, and the Lightning had to deal with that a little bit. So those are fair comments, but I'm also pointing out some of the good things that he did last night.
Yeah.
Which he's defending pretty well without the puck, which is usually something that he does consistently well. I think one of those player polls that we've seen, maybe even been last year, players around the league named him, if not the best or one of the best players, that hardest to deal with, when you have the puck in the other team's end, because he's big, he skates, he's got the long stick, he can disrupt a lot of plays.
Yeah, no, it's a good point by you.
I do want to mention the power play, though, which is probably a good segue, as we have about 10 minutes left.
And Enzo just waved. He wanted to make his
appearance. Hey, Enzo. What's Enzo going to be tonight?
He's getting ready for Buzz from Toy Story.
Very nice.
You know, there you go. We got to get.
Oh, that's going old school.
That is going old school. You know, you got a friend in me.
So Phil used this word last night, and I heard
Yeah.
Chief use it as well in the last call. And this is the word that I would use to describe the power play for the first unit: deliberate. The Lightning are being too deliberate right now in moving the puck when they have the puck in the offensive zone. So people can quibble with kind of the formation. I know our loyal listener and active listener, Anthony. We love Anthony. I love his comments. He likes to. He feels very strongly about what he believes, and we love that. Maybe Anthony would rearrange some things. I'm not sure they need to rearrange things. I just think they need to move the puck more quickly and do things that will open up holes for Kucherov to exploit, because that's really what you want to have happen. Right now, Kucherov is not able, at least enough, on the power play, excuse me, to find those seams and find those openings to give his teammates a chance to get off a dangerous shot. So how do you do that? Well, one way you can do it is shoot more and go to areas that are a little bit more of a soft underbelly. We talked about that on yesterday's show. And Brian Engblom mentioned this. You know, he would love to see Gensel walk that goal line extended.
Yeah, right.
Like that will cross up the penalty kill. Because they're like, you know, we were ready for Kucherov passing to Hedman, passing to point. You know, Gensel usually bumps it back to Kucherov and they try and set it up again. Gensel takes that to the net. Now you're creating a little bit of chaos and they have to worry about that, right? So this is what I think. I think the setup is fine. When they start the power play with Cirelli, because they want him to take the face off, they have to rearrange things because Cirelli is out there. When Bjorkstrand is out there instead of Cirelli, they have a slightly different look, and Kucherov is on the other side of the ice. I don't have a problem, actually, with either formation. I think it's about moving the puck more quickly.
That's fair.
And mixing things up so that the penalty kill isn't just so settled in what they want to do.
And winning faceoffs. You know, I think that's
that'll
help.
Cirelli, I mean, I think they did okay. I may not be remembering right. Yeah, they went 7-2 on power play faceoffs last night.
That's
so
not
that
bad.
wasn't an issue.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad, for sure. FKA 322, excellent defense, keeps the team winning. Really hope they start turning around their offensive woes. The power play is a mess, partner. You just kind of
so those are
that.
two different categories. The power play is not clicking right now, but I do not think they have offensive woes. They have run into exceptional goaltending, which, look, these goalies are in the NHL, and Lindbaum may be in the NHL moving forward, although Vegas has a whole other kettle of fish with the Carter Hart signing, which I know, you know, we didn't even talk about that when Lindbaum was up. I mean, Carter Hart hasn't played a game in how long, so I don't know what's happening with that. But watching Carl Lindbaum play, you're like, this guy looks like he can play in the NHL. The other guys the Lightning have seen are NHL goalies. They can play at a very, very high level. I think the goaltending the Lightning have seen, though, over this stretch of time, they talk about the goals saved above expected, which, you know, I feel about that stat, but I can say unequivocally, the goalies the Lightning have seen have saved goals above expected.
Yeah.
During the stretch of time, and that should return to the mean if the Lightning can keep generating the number of chances and the level of the chances that they have generated. So that has not really happened on the power play for the most part, but it has happened 5-on-5.
Yeah. It's a valid point, and, you know, something we're going to continue to monitor. Elgin says, when Paul comes back, assuming we see roughly the same kind of play from Finley, James, and DeStew, who would you send down? Risk Finley or send down a, what is that, a WE player that's
I don't know what
well?
that stands for.
Yeah, I don't, I was trying to.
Waiver exempt?
Maybe. There you go.
Yeah, waiver
there
exempt.
There you go.
I don't think DeStew or James right now are going anywhere.
I mean,
but by the time Paul comes back, things may look a little different.
I mean, do you think Finley's going to get claimed at this point? Right? I mean, what was your working theory is that most guys that get sent down,
most, but not all.
Not
and
all.
There may be something attractive about a young, right-handed, big centerman
What Steve said, you could send Douglas down too. Is that, well, you could, but he would have to go through waivers, correct?
Yeah, that just wasn't a name that was mentioned. He would get reclaimed by Utah. I have no doubt about that one. The Finley situation, who knows? But yes, on waivers? I don't really understand.
Yes, he's on. Yeah, he'd have to clear waivers. He would have to clear waivers. Yes, that's what he's saying.
And Utah could, as we've talked about many times, another team could claim Douglas, but if another team doesn't claim Douglas, meaning other than Utah could just take him back and send him straight to the minors. So as it relates to Finley, I think the sort of player the profile that he fits may be attractive to some other teams. A young, big, right-handed center with room to grow. Is that enough for a team to put a claim in on him? Because as we have said, it's not just putting the claim in and getting the player. The player needs to stay on your NHL roster for the rest of the year. Now, some teams might be like, we're not worried about the rest of the year. We just want this player now. Some teams might be like, he is going to stay in the NHL roster. We want to work with this guy so that maybe he will be a regular for us as he continues to grow into kind of a regular everyday NHL player. We don't know. But the fact remains that most players who go through waivers are not claimed. But the number is not zero. So there is risk.
Yeah.
We're going back to the question. It is unknown.
Yeah.
If Crozier takes the last roster spot, at some point Paul will be activated and there will have to be a subsequent move made. But between the time that Crozier is activated and the time that Paul is activated, who knows what's going to happen? You may see another player injured. You may have some play happen. I don't mean one play, but general play where it's like, all right, well, maybe this would benefit this player to go down. Who knows? That was kind of their feeling with Geekie, right? It wasn't just
for sure.
They wanted to free up the spot, but they also felt it would benefit Geekie to go down.
And the question is, how often are you going to keep going back to that? You know, at some point, something has to stabilize for Geekie. You can't keep
Geekie,
back.
yes.
Yeah, for Geekie specifically.
But
for these other guys, who knows? I don't know.
Do I think the Lightning will prioritize waiver exempt over production? By production, I don't mean goal production necessarily, but just
at this point, no.
I don't think so. Yeah,
no.
I think if they, so really we're talking about Destu and James, and Crozier, but Crozier's not going anywhere. So would you send down one of those guys, because you could send them down with no issue, over somebody who would have to clear waivers? Or do you say James and Destu are helping us, so we're just going to send somebody else down, which is what they did with Chafee?
Or do you make a trade?
You can make a trade.
I mean, that's the other thing, too. You could to try and get something. If you feel, you've got to know out there, you probably have a pretty good feel. Now, you don't want to tip your hand either. Because if you're like, hey, I want to ship this player to you, they could say, well, look, I know the Lightning are in a bind here. You could just, send him and I could claim him.
Though. I don't think this is a bind, Greg. This is a bind for people like us or the fans who are like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do? It's like
more of like your roster. Yeah. Like, you can only have so many guys up here, I guess is what I'm saying.
This is different, though. The bind was last year where they were so close to the cap that it made more sense to try and roll the dice and go through most of the season with 21 or if needed 22 on your active roster to create a little bit of space so you could make a deal at the deadline, which they did. But even though they didn't make a deal at the deadline, just give yourself some wriggle room here. That's being in a bind. This is not being in a bind.
Yep.
This is part of the job. This is the general manager's responsibility to sometimes make harder decisions, understanding that you may lose a player if you send down that player who has to clear waivers. I don't think there's a GM out there, though. Pick a GM, one of 32 GMs, who would hesitate to send down a player if they felt that it was needed to help their team. They would hesitate to send down a player. Some players maybe, but just generally, like garden variety player to clear waivers, every GM in the league will send that player down if they feel it's in the best interest of the lineup that they want to have at the NHL level.
Yep.
And Julian is no exception.
It's a great point by you. We're going to get to more of these questions over the weekend. And
we really didn't get into Utah
Monday.
Too much, but Logan Cooley just signed a long extension. They're kind of like the Anaheims and the Chicagos. They have several, I'll say, really exciting young players And obviously they made the big deal with the Lightning. They have Sergachev to anchor their defense. Clayton Keller is still there. I mean, he's not young anymore.
Cooley, they got the Cooley kid, right?
Yeah, that's what I just said. They signed him to an extension. Dylan
Pittsburgh
Gunther.
boy?
Yes,
Pittsburgh
boy. Yes.
Well, he's good. He's a good player.
He is a good player.
He is a good player. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that transpires. But that's a 3:30 start,
Yes.
and we'll be on the air at 3. We'll have the last call after, and then partner, you and I will be breaking down the game on Monday. Are we taping or are we going live? Do we make that decision yet?
We
What do you
have,
need
and
to
I'll
do?
be in Denver, so
You'll
it's
be in Denver. Okay. All right. So you'll be 2
it's
hours
fine
behind.
for me either way. Yeah.
Yeah, you're 2
And
hours
then Tuesday
behind.
I'll be at the rink
Okay.
because there will be a skate on Tuesday.
All right. We'll figure that out. Great job this week. Always
Yeah, you
fun when the
too.
Lightning
Thanks
win.
for all of the input, fans.
Yeah, keep those coming in. Tell your friends. Listen, we'll get you on the air. Trick or treat some on my feed. Be safe out there.
Yes.
And
by the way, congratulations again to Kucherov. That was a great ceremony.
That was very cool.
If the fans were at the game, or I don't even know, did we find out if the Spot 66 carried the ceremony? If you had a chance to see the ceremony, it was
But you
pretty
could
neat.
listen to it for sure on the radio.
Yeah,
side, which we
and
always
some
encourage.
nice testimonials, among them Ovechkin and Sergei Fedorov that had meant a lot to Kucherov and some of his former teammates like Tyler Johnson and Palat and Nemetstikov, and
Love
Sergachev
that.
had a huge smile on his face, and Stamkos, of course. So that was pretty cool.
Always very cool for that. All right, everybody. We appreciate you listening this week. We will talk to you on Monday, noon to 1. I'm Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.